And I would say in that moment, right there, is probably what I flipped the most to becoming way more conservative. I mean, way more conservative about my belief system, about a lot of things, because people were trying to take something away from me.
When I saw you popping up and being a little bit more,
you can say,
conservative transparently, I thought that's a shift, and I worried for you a little bit. It's like, oh no, they're going to cancel him.
After 10 years of being their #1 show on their entire network, and they could argue, but the numbers are the numbers, that I felt like I needed to get my voice back.
Well, you may know him for his business expertise on The Profit or his brand new series, The Fixer, on Fox, where he turns struggling businesses into success stories. But beyond television, he's a serial entrepreneur, an investor, a philanthropist, and leader who believes in the people, the process, and the product above all else. From Bed Bath & Beyond's revival to the future of small business in divided America, he's here in studio with me to break it all down. Please welcome Marcus Lemonis. All right, Marcus, I have to jump right into news of the day. All right. Jimmy Kimmel canceled, the shortest cancellation of all time, coming back. I struggle with this because I'm a very free speech absolutist type person. I would never want it to be that the FCC jumped in and was like, no, but I also understand from a business perspective, if the folks that syndicate your show know that you're offending half or more of the audience and they don't think you're funny, I also understand the business side of it. Yeah. But I'm very curious where you land on that.
Well, I think there's a terrible misnomer going out there that the FCC caused this to happen. And I think that's just a bunch of nonsense speculation. At the end of the day, Disney has a business to run, and their affiliates are essentially that's their bank account. And when the affiliates decide that whatever messaging is being delivered, whether it's sports or comedy or the news, doesn't match their viewers, they can make a choice to say, you guys can make it, we're not going to air it. And so I think the preemptive strike that Sinclair took, which is a Utah-based company who has a very strong belief system, just said, like, we don't like that kind of thing. I think there's been a lot of criticism around Disney. Did you react, and are you censoring things? And the answer, in my opinion, is your employer, when you work for them, has an obligation to deliver to their constituency, and their constituency isn't their viewers. It's their affiliates who pay their bills. Mm-hmm. And if the affiliates say that we don't want to do this, you have a decision to make. And it was a little unclear. Was it a suspension? Was it a cancellation? It was a little murky, but I don't think the FCC came in and said to Disney, to Bob Iger, you need to make them go away or we're going to pull your license. Do you believe that happened?
No, not at all.
Yeah. So we all probably need to stop with that. If you or I were working at Chick-fil-A or anywhere else, and we said things at the counter that offended the guests who write the checks, the owner, the manager would say to us, hey, you could have your beliefs, but not while you're serving nuggets.
Right.
And I think that's the respect piece that we have to understand is when we accept a check from an employer, they set the rules. And you could call it free speech, but it's not free. People are paying money to air it. And if they don't think it's funny or they don't like the content, they can say, thank you for coming. No different than you can cut the quarterback from the team if he's not making you money and filling the stands.
Right. Well, my perspective on it is that Jimmy Kimmel, along with Colbert and a lot of the late night hosts, they've lost their audience. Because I think their audience is people like me that are from middle America, that don't live in New York City or LA or Chicago, not going out every night to dinner or to clubs or to bars. They're staying home with their families and they're watching TV. That's the end of their day. And more than half this country voted for President Trump. So if you go on nightly and you not only mock the president, but now you're trying to use the assassination of a young father and husband as a punchline.
Terrible.
You're really turning off more than half of your audience.
I would disagree with that. You're turning off your entire audience.
Well, unfortunately, there's some that enjoy it.
There may be some people, okay? There may be some people that are idiots and they're celebrating what happened. But the bulk of people on both sides, and I know a lot of people that are on the left that think that it was horrible, that it was terrible, that a wife would lose her husband, a father would lose their child, and somebody would get assassinated for free speech. And so this idea that only the right was offended by what Jimmy Kimmel said, I don't think is correct. Right. I think a lot of people just said, like, that was inappropriate and it was tasteless. And you got sent to timeout. It'd be interesting to see what he says tonight.
Well, the reports last week before the announcement that he was going to come back on, the reports were that he was planning to go out the next night and triple down and continue to blame MAGA. And that's what was the straw that broke the camel's back. But at the end of the day, my husband asked me this last night. Well, Disney decided that they wanted to have him back and all this. And is it because they were going to lose money? I don't think it's because they were going to lose money without Jimmy. I think Disney is more beholden to woke than they are business.
I don't disagree with that. I think Disney's also beholden to their affiliates. I do believe that.
But do the affiliates want Jimmy back?
I think the bulk of them may. And they may have a different ideology. I don't know what his contract says. I don't know what the payout is. I don't know how much longer he's going to be on. I don't know if he compromised and said, the ratings are bad and it may be time to go. I need to apologize. I need to own up for it. My family, my wife, my kids are upset that I said that. I have no idea. And maybe there's a proper exit stage left that is done with, I don't know, a little more dignity for everybody. And maybe he just says, I'm sorry.
Well,
I was wrong.
That's an optimistic view. His guest tonight is going to be California Governor Gavin Newsom. So I have a feeling there's not going to be a lot of, I'm so sorry, I respect this country. I have a feeling it's going to be some middle fingers.
Would you put him on as your first guest if you were coming back on to try to make some sort of mend of something you did that wasn't right?
No, but I don't think that's his goal, is to make amends. I think his goal is to just do double middle fingers. I'm back. You couldn't cancel me. And now I'm going to have California Governor Newsom on, which I think all of this, as somebody who's been a victim of cancel culture, not only targeted by the Biden White House, but just, I'm sure you have as well. For me, it's so funny because now the right is canceling people. Well, I don't think the right is canceling anybody. We're not ABC. We don't run ABC, so I don't know how the right made that decision. But to me, as somebody who has been canceled and censored, and up until maybe a year ago on YouTube, we couldn't talk about men and women's sports, and we couldn't talk anything about COVID whatsoever because you would just be completely locked out of your account and you would cease to exist online. And Instagram wasn't much different. You'd be flagged, couldn't say this, couldn't say that. To an extent, it's still there. They've loosened it a little bit with the election of President Trump. But this whole, the right is canceling people, I find interesting.
If he shows up tonight and does the opposite of what he should do, you'll lose advertisers. And that's more impactful than losing affiliates. And I think at the end of the day, American companies want unification. And we have a president that was elected by more than half the country, and it needs to be supported. And you can have a different ideological belief. I went back and looked at a debate between Ronald Reagan and Mondale a long time ago. Two very different ideologies. And Ronald Reagan used to poke fun, and Mondale would poke fun. But there was a reasonable discourse, much like Charlie had, a reasonable discourse around we could disagree about everything, but we could still be okay with each other. And God forbid anybody got shot. Your party line should go away, and you should just be horrified by the fact that that happens.
Yeah, well, I wish it was like that. But unfortunately, we saw a little bit of the opposite. I want to talk about that a little bit with you as well. The memorial was huge this past weekend.
Unbelievable.
Nearly 100,000 people.
20 million streams or 25 million streams.
People watching. We obviously covered it on Fox News all day long. We discussed it on the Big Weekend Show. For me, though, and Erica talked about this in her speech, when you saw that many people come together, and it was not out of anger, it wasn't anything.
Love.
Yeah, it was all love. And after Charlie was assassinated, we didn't see riots. We didn't see burning. We didn't see fighting. We just saw people come together with candlelight visuals. And on the other side, it hasn't always been that way. In fact, I can't really think of a time where it was really that way and it didn't break out into mass chaos and violence. So for me, it's frustrating when I hear the both sides argument. That annoys me a little bit.
Should upset you more than annoy you.
Yeah.
Because it's a victim culture. And that's the piece that I think I'm most troubled by than anything else. I did feel, though, that some people in universities and in workplaces celebrated it and were terminated. And so I think people are starting to recognize the necessity to acknowledge it. But the challenge is that there is a big faction of the left who believes that if something bad happens to them, it's your fault or it's my fault or it's somebody else's fault, as opposed to accepting responsibility. And that's troubling. And I've gone back over the last couple of nights and I've looked at old clips of David Letterman and old clips of even Jimmy Kimmel, where David was inappropriate with Jennifer Aniston and getting near her and touching her, or Jimmy Kimmel was making comments in the airport. Nobody's bothered by that back then.
Right.
And they were all able to make a lot of money. But if any of us had said anything like that, done anything like that, it'd have been a problem.
Yeah.
For sure, it'd have been a problem.
It feels inconsistent.
It feels inconsistent. And the one thing that I don't think you and I have ever talked about is my belief system has changed over time.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, my belief system has changed.
Now, I will say this. I've been watching you since whenever the first show came out.
Yeah,
I've watched them all.
2013, yeah.
I've watched all of them, every move from the prophet to the fixer to all of it. I've watched them all. And as someone who is a conservative, I could recognize that you had conservative principles and values because you're a capitalist and you're a business owner.
Yeah.
To me, that lends itself more to conservatism, especially now.
I'm fiscally
But
very conservative.
when I saw you popping up and being a little bit more
You can say it.
conservative transparently, I thought,
What happened?
that's a shift. And I worried for you a little bit. It's like, oh no, they're
It-
going to cancel him.
Yeah, they actually. So we could talk about that a little bit, actually. You know, I have always been. I come from a very conservative family. I was born in a different country, so I had an opportunity to come here. So I'm super grateful for that. But I had a different ideology when I was 14, 15, 18, and 19. I was young and I was dumb and I didn't make money and I didn't pay my bills and I didn't understand things. All I knew is my parents were strict and that was it. But I had a different belief system. And my belief system was based out of a little bit of naivety and a little bit of lack of education. And I'm not embarrassed to admit, and I think most people are, is that until you experience it yourself, until you see it yourself, until you manage it, until it's done to you, you tend to be a little bit more, liberal isn't the word, but you tend to be a little bit more forgiving of things that you shouldn't be. You tend to be a little bit too generous around things. And I would say that as I got into making the profit, my life and my perspective changed because I would run into situations where I wouldn't feel good about it, or I wouldn't feel like things worked out the way I thought it was going to be, or I would feel that even outside of the show, people would take advantage, particularly outside of the show more than inside the show. And over time, I started to think that my perspective was wrong. And I spent a long time at CNBC, a long time, and had a number of things happen to me there that I think misportrayed how I really felt. And when I decided to leave, I left after 10 years of being their number one show on their entire network. And they could argue, but the numbers are the numbers, that I felt like I needed to get my voice back. And it really started to come out in 2017 in Statesville, North Carolina, when I was for the first time attacked about the flag.
Right.
And said, you have to take it down. And I was like, I'm not doing that. Well, it's dangerous, or it's distracting, or you're not following the rules. And I would say in that moment right there is probably what I flipped the most to becoming way more conservative. I mean, way more conservative about my belief system, about a lot of things, because people were trying to take something away from me. Forget about speech. They were trying to take something away from me. That was the most important thing to me.
Right.
In my business that serves this country. So that's probably more where it flipped than anywhere else.
Did you think it was weird in 2017, 18, but especially in 2020, where if you had an American flag, that was not only a symbol that you were a conservative, but also they attached a lot of other things to that. The American flag was oppressive. The American flag was racist. The American flag was Islamophobic. The American flag was transphobic. Everything that they attached to that American flag in 2020.
Or burning it.
Right, burning it. And that, in my opinion, that's protected speech, and I don't like it, but I think it's protected. But in 2020...
See, I can't get there on that.
Well...
I understand that it's protected speech, but it's not with your mouth.
Right.
You're literally taking something that I love and you're burning it. And so I guess you have the right to do it, but we're not going to be friends anymore.
Right. Oh, I agree with you on that. But that American flag in the election of 2020, I remember there was a New York Times article that was written, somebody saying, I saw all these American flags and it just made me distraught because it's all these conservatives with this oppressive flag. And they really likened it to being
Say it.
Confederate flag. I mean, it was all of it. It was
Confederate
like this
flag, Nazi flag,
Yeah.
all sorts of crazy things, that it now became a different symbol for a faction of the country who thought it was a bad thing.
Right. But the left didn't want any ownership of the American flag for a good, I would say, 5 years. That flag to them was oppressive.
It was representative of President Trump in
Right.
their mind. And that correlation, they drew the correlation as if the flag belonged to one person or represented one person as opposed to everybody. And I would argue, it's still that way today.
Yeah. But they gave it up. I said it on Outnumbered on Friday. It's such a weird thing to give up for the left. To cede the American flag to the other side when you are an American political party is weird to me. That's a bad
meaning they just
strategic
said, like,
decision.
here,
They're like,
this
we don't
is
want
your
it.
symbol.
This is ick to us. I thought that was very weird. If you want us to own the American flag, if that's a symbol of the right, I mean, we'll take it, but it's a little weird that you're going to give it to us that way.
I would almost want to say to somebody, thank you for offering it,
Yeah.
but it does belong to you too.
Right.
And you should study the history of it and how it came to be and why it matters. Because we can disagree, what that flag represents is our ability to disagree. We don't have to go to dinner together, even though we should, because we could talk more about what we don't agree about. But when you start to do things to it or do things around it or pin it on me as if it's like a scarlet letter, that's when it's a problem. That's how it became for me. That's how it became for me.
I want to talk about Governor Gavin Newsom because you guys went back and forth. And I thought that was when he was in his real phase of the rage tweeting, trying to be President Trump. And he said some rude, weird things to you that didn't land, mocking Bed Bath & Beyond.
Yeah.
And you reviving it. And your decision not to open in California for business reasons. Were you surprised that he decided, as the governor of, he likes to tell us, the fourth largest economy in the world, that was his message to Bed Bath & Beyond and a business?
It started a long time ago for me in California. I own a bunch of businesses there, and everybody said, please don't say what businesses you own there because it'll be bad for the business. But it's obvious. There's Camping World stores in California. They do very well. They've always done well. It is more expensive to do business there than it is anywhere else. So I had a bit of a roadmap. I used to live in I made a terrible mistake, but I used to live in a town called Montecito part-time. And I left there. My wife, who is liberal, said, we have to get out of here. These people are nuts. She owned a business there during COVID, and she owned a business in Illinois during COVID. And then she owned other businesses in non-COVID and sort of non-liberal places. And she said to me, like, I think I'm going to change parties because I just am trying to run my business and feed myself and pay my employees. And I can't operate and I can't do this and I can't do that. She goes, this is nuts. Let's get out of here. Let's get out of here. And so when I left California, and I wasn't there full time, but when I left California and we closed our business there when we left, I looked back when we decided to open up Bed Bath stores, and I said, I feel like I have to say something. So I wrote I really thought about it. In the middle of the night, I wrote it out, wanted to post a statement. I wasn't meant to be personal. I didn't even mention the governor's name. I didn't mention an elected official. I didn't mention liberal or conservative. I just said, fundamentally, it is too expensive to do business in California. It is too expensive to rent. That's because it's beautiful and there's a lot of people. I can get over that. It's too expensive to what? Have labor? And people lost their mind and they said, you don't want to pay people. It's not that I don't want to pay people. It's a free market. I want to pay people what I think the market tells me I should pay them. And if the market says I have to pay them $27 an hour, then that's what the market is. If the market says 14, but then you tell me that it has to be $25 an hour.
Right.
You're telling me how to run my business. You're telling me how to pay people. You're telling me all these things. I don't want to be part of that because I believe in capitalism and I believe in a free market, just like everybody believes in free speech. Capitalism and a free market is no different than free speech to me.
What about the retail theft? Because, they passed Prop 36. The governor was opposed it and still won't fully fund it. But Prop 36 was supposed to be the antidote to Props 47 and 57, which basically said all those felonies are now misdemeanors and you can steal $995 and it's still a misdemeanor. And not only can you steal $995, you can do that CVS and then you can go to that Macy's and then you can go there and it's still going to be a misdemeanor and we're going to treat it as such, like it's jaywalking. Prop 36 is trying to remedy that. It has not been fully funded, but as somebody who has not only invested in retail businesses, but Camping World is a retail business. Did you see the impacts of that with the smash and grab and just come in and take it and leave? And
I think it's bigger than California. I think it's in the blue states where they believe that people have the ability to take what they want and forget how we got there. And I've had people say to me, when COVID happened, and Illinois became a bigger challenge than it is today, downtown Chicago under Lightfoot became an absolute war zone. And I was the dumbest person who moved from the suburbs to the city. And I moved to the city because I just didn't want to be out like looking at my grass all day. My wife owned a business in our building, and she had about $600,000 of inventory in her business. And when the riots, I'm going to call them riots, people have been mad. When the riots broke out and they drove cars into her building and they took all of her stuff, and then we repaired it and replenished it, and they took it all again. Twice she lost $1 million doing it. She just said to me, like, I don't want to live here anymore. I don't want to do business here anymore. No one's protecting me. We would have people come in and hold our staff up at gunpoint, and the police would come and say, did they steal anything? Yes. How much was it? It was a $2,000 handbag. Well, I'm sorry, that doesn't meet the minimum. And my wife would say, that took me a long time to make $2,000.
right.
What do you mean? And when I was a small child, or when you were a small child, I got trouble one time. I went to the 7-Eleven. I put a pack of gum in my pocket. I think I was 6 or 7 on my bike. They caught me. They called the police. My parents came. Aside from getting my ass whooped by my family, as I should, the police were there. It was a serious thing. There was consequences. If they would have said to me, oh, it's just a pack of gum, and they would have let me go, I would have then said, well, if it was a pack of gum I could get away with, what can I get away with next? Can I steal a whole case of gum? And then can I steal the whole store? And so if there's no consequences to bad behavior, and the left believes that people are entitled to things that don't belong to them, then don't get mad when everybody wants to have a gun.
Yeah.
To protect their family, to protect themselves, to protect their livelihood. Don't get mad.
It's so interesting to me.
God, I get so fired up about this.
In 2020, you had, we must be locked down. You must shut your businesses because they're dangerous. And then a couple months later it was, but people can come and loot your business for George Floyd, and that's acceptable. And they had all the journalists and the medical experts saying, yeah, COVID is dangerous, but we don't want to infringe on, a civil rights moment. So it was a hiatus in which you could gather, but only to loot and riot. And for people like me who were mad about the shutdowns from the very beginning, and I want your take on that as well, that thought that never should have happened ever and was stunned that it actually did in America. And then, but people can come and loot and it's for justice. That to me was the dumbest time in American history, at least in my lifetime. But this whole left trying to do this mental gymnastics of opening your business dangerous, you're going to kill grandma.
Stealing from your business, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And burning it to the very ground, that was okay.
Yeah.
And we're talking black business, white business, brown business.
Any business.
They were destroyed.
Yeah. If you talk to people in the black community, and I have a chance to do that often as a advocate for small business, they're tired of it. They're tired of it. They're tired of having stuff taken. You go on to 79th and Essex on the south side of Chicago, which is a rough area, which has historically been very blue. They will tell you that they don't support the mayor anymore. They want President Trump to send in reinforcement. They want all of that. During COVID, the benefit for me in having Camping World is that it's a necessity. So I didn't shut my businesses down anywhere. And I ran into a number of places across the country that were challenging why we were open, that we weren't a necessity. I had to convince people that people lived in their RVs and they needed to travel. And people, wanted to get out, didn't want to get on airplanes. Separate from that, other businesses that I have, I didn't shut them down either. And we were fined, and we were told that, we're violating all these rules. And I keep coming back to my wife's business because she's just a small business owner. She just said, if I didn't have the blessing of having a household where we could afford to do this, and I had to pay my bills, you're essentially telling me to go out of business, to lose my life savings, to not be able to pay my rent or my mortgage or my car payment, to educate my kids, to eat food. What do I do? What do I do? And I understand that you want me to stand 6 feet away from people. No problem. I understand that you need me to wear a mask. I don't agree with it, but no problem. I'll comply with whatever the precautions are because I want to be a law-abiding citizen. But telling me that I can't have my business open, and she just said, I'm not going to close. And I said the same thing in our businesses. I think I recently sold my place in Chicago and I closed my business at the same time. I'm no longer a resident because I couldn't take the insanity. It's the same insanity that exists in California.
And still does.
I think it's worse. I think it's worse in Illinois than it's ever been with Pritzker and Johnson. I think it's getting worse in California. This idea that Governor Newsom wants to tell ICE agents that they have to remove their masks because
not presenting themselves as law enforcement, and they're just taking people captive and hostage and shipping them out to El Salvador. I mean, that's the whole.
Do we have evidence of that?
They don't, but they
so
like to
people
make
are
that
scared
claim.
because somebody has a mask. Well, when you threaten ICE agents' lives,
Right.
and they're caught on video and there's facial recognition, and then you could find out who they are and you could go to their house and hurt them or hurt their family, why wouldn't you want to have them protected?
Well, I think we know the answer to that, or at least I
But
do.
what is it though?
Oh, I think that in Gavin's particular case, I think Gavin so desperately wants to be president, and he realizes that he has to be the anti-Trump of the anti-Trump. And so if President Trump wants secure borders and President Trump wants mass deportations, he's going to go out of his way to be the opposite of that. I also think California doesn't want to deport anybody. I think that they realize that if they have all illegal aliens deported out of their state's going to be in real trouble because they rely on a lot of under-the-table illegal alien labor, and I think they rely on it for population so they can have seats in Congress. And I think they're terrified of losing both those things. And you hear Mayor Karen Bass say that. She admits it. She says the quiet part out loud. Well, if you deport these people, then our businesses will close.
Why don't they close other places?
Well, because California is so dependent on illegal alien labor. And to me, that's how little Karen Bass and Governor Newsom think of immigrants.
Why are they dependent on illegal labor?
No, because it's cheaper. They can pay them under the table.
Because a business can actually survive under that premise?
Right.
So you regulate at the top and you're forcing bad behavior at the bottom as opposed to letting a free market just determine what it is.
But I think that's why they're terrified. And I think they have no problem demonizing law enforcement. I don't think that's a new thing. I think they've been doing it, especially in 2020, watching what they did in California, watching them disparage law enforcement, whether it's ICE or whether it's Border Patrol or a regular police officer. I think that the left has anti-law and order and the people who enforce it.
You think California flips red anytime soon?
I think it's going to take a while.
I think LA will.
You think?
I think the fire infuriated people, made them scared, made them feel abandoned, has hit their pocketbook. And I think very wealthy people who particularly were probably supporters of the left before, who still don't have a permit, still can't get answers on their house, still can't get their insurance paid. When you hit people in the pocketbook, it changes their mindset very quickly.
Enough to vote Republican, though.
I think so. I think it will take a moderate Republican. I think it'll take somebody just a little off of center, but I think it will take somebody who says, we are going to protect our borders because it's the right thing to do. We are going to deregulate business because businesses need to flourish. We are going to attract other businesses to come here by sitting down with them and finding out what it takes. We are going to do these kinds of things that allows everybody to prosper. I do think that'll happen. It would take somebody like me in California.
Yeah.
And I say that jokingly, but it would take somebody like me who says, look, I have certain views about certain things, but my views around fiscal conservative and policy conservatism are not too far. I'm not extreme right, and I'm not in the center. I'm sort of like in the middle of both of those. I think it would take somebody like me who could say to people on both sides, cut the nonsense.
What do you think about Rick Caruso?
I have been a fan of his in the past, to be candid with you. And I met him. He had his Miramar hotel when I was living there, and I belonged to his club. And he actually asked me to come to some of his events. He's a capitalist. He's a capitalist. And I'm surprised that he lost to Karen.
Yeah.
I was really surprised that he lost to Karen.
Yeah, I was too.
He'd almost be better as a governor, to be honest. I think he'd be more effective.
Right. Steve Hilton's a friend of mine. I think that Steve Hilton could fit that. He's still Republican, but I think he comes with a perspective that's a little bit more moderate.
Yeah.
That people can believe in. But I think it's going to take a while for
Do you
California
think the
to
person
get there.
who runs for office has to modify a portion of their views to properly represent their constituency, or do you think they need to stay firm in theirs and try to pull people to them?
I'm someone who's socially more moderate. So I think in California, I think that common sense could win the day. I don't think there are very many people, even on the far left in California, that if they're honest with themselves, think that men should be in women's sports.
Nobody should think that.
But they will say that, and they will defend that to the death.
What's the reason?
Well, I think they're beholden to what I call the rainbow mafia. The same way Disney is beholden to woke.
But I know a lot of gay people who don't think it's okay.
No, but that's why the fringe has completely hijacked that entire movement. And in California, they are so emotional about trans. It's not even the rest of the letters, it's the T. They are so beholden to the T that they might privately know that it's wrong to have men taking accolades and spots away from women, but they will never say it because they are so beholden to the T of the LGBTQ that I think that they, and at a national level, the Democrat Party, I think as much as they know it's a loser for them, they will still cling to it.
Why?
I think they're just beholden to it. I think that they think that that's where their base is. And once they've gone so far in that direction, I think it's almost to them an admission of stupidity. If they say, yeah, we did say men should be in women's sports, but now we're saying maybe not. I think that that's an admission that their entire party platform for the last 5 years has been moronic.
Parents that I talk to, and these are men, the men of the household, when I talk to them about this particular topic about men in female sports, particularly when they have daughters, they could be the most liberal friends that I have, and they will all say to me, I don't want some guy knocking my daughter over, or I'm going to punch him in the nose. I don't want some guy taking the trophy stand away from my daughter. I don't want that. And I understand that that's the life they want to live, and I have a respect level for that if that's what they want to do. But nothing's going to get in between me and my daughter. And I think it has to be personalized for people for them to feel a certain way.
Well, and I think they'll vote that way, but the platform's not going to change for me on the Democrat side. I think that they've learned nothing, and they're going to lean all the way back into woke. I think they've learned absolutely nothing. And there's no doubt in my mind, if we have a Democrat president in 2028, that border will be open wide up again. But you know, if they do elect, I don't think that they're going to. Their party's in shambles. But there will be a Democrat again at some point, and unless the party has a major revival, the next Democrat president will open that border wide up again to 20 million people, just like Joe did, because it was by design. There's no other way to look at it.
It's a form of gerrymandering.
Yeah, of course it is.
That's all it is.
It's cheap labor, and they need the population because they need to keep their seats and they need to keep their power.
I'm a little, where were you born?
South Dakota.
Yeah, so I'm a little conflicted in this topic, and I'm probably more passionate about it than I should be. But when I came to this country, and my parents were born in Ohio. When I came to this country, my parents were very clear with me, and I'm an only child, early on, this is where you came from. This is how it works. This is the blessings you have to be here. I used to have to go to, and you know, when I got my confirmation, I had to go to Bible study and CCD and do all those things, as I should. When I wanted to become a U.S. citizen, my parents made me go to class. I had to learn everything. I was a little boy. And I had to learn everything. And the day that I became naturalized, I remember I had like my little brown suit and my bow tie on, and I went down and I got my citizenship papers. And from that moment on, I realized what a privilege it is. I think the left is a little confused, and I have this debate with people. And Cubans, by the way, are don't say enough about this, and I want to talk about that. I think the left is very confused that nobody is saying immigration is bad. People are saying illegal immigration is bad. If you want to come to this country and you want to do so by following the process and filling out the paperwork and doing whatever the law says you're supposed to do, they'll determine if you can come or not. It's just sort of what it is. I'm still a believer that immigration is not a bad thing, but it can't be mass chaos. It has to be controlled. It has to be done in a way where you are respecting the country. You understand what the rules are. I could never be president. I understand that's what it is. Even if I wanted to be, I couldn't be. But I can contribute to society in a way that shows that I'm grateful for who I am and being here, and I have to follow the rules.
I think there should be some degree of just expected assimilation. And I say that because there's a viral video going around of the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan, telling an American citizen and longtime resident of Dearborn, who happens to be a Christian, who spoke at a city council meeting saying, hey, naming this street after somebody who is on video supporting, Hezbollah and Hamas, that is not the way we should be going here in Dearborn. And the mayor told him, you don't belong here, and I will throw a parade when you leave.
I saw that.
And when you look at Dearborn and you look at some other places in America that don't really look like America, and there's zero assimilation, and people that have been in this country for 20 plus years who don't know more than 2 or 3 words of English, that for American citizens, particularly on the right, is frustrating. And it's not because we think anyone should abandon their culture. I believe in having a rich culture. But when there's no degree of assimilation, and look at Europe. I mean, the president talked about it this morning at the UN. They're losing their culture and they're ceding it. They're like, we don't want to be European anymore. We
don't want to be German.
Yes.
We don't want to be whatever it may be.
Under the guise of political correctness and being nice to everyone, we'll completely lose our culture and we'll completely take on yours. And we will let the guests dictate the rules in our own country. And I think that that is so insulting. And Europe is, to me, a cautionary tale of that.
It's a simple way. When we were young and our parents would take us to their friend's home or our aunt's home, we would go into the house and our parents would say to us when we got out of the car, this isn't your house. Clean up your dishes. You go into somebody's house, whatever food they put on the table, you say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, thank you, all the rules. To me, the way I look at it is I could never imagine saying to somebody who was born in South Dakota, you should leave.
Yeah.
I would say, thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm grateful for that. I would like you to think differently about a particular topic, or I'd like you to think, but I understand that we just don't agree, but thank you for letting me be here and for giving me the ability to have an opinion.
Yeah. Well, in a lot of places in this country, that is not happening. And it's startling in some places. To me, Sharia law is not compatible with the United States Constitution or American values. So the fact that some cities in America are now implementing different notes of Sharia law into their communities or into governance, to me, that's horrifying. These are the same people who claim to be Queers for Palestine, and they don't get it, and I don't understand it. There's a lot of things as a conservative, I can look at the other side and disagree, but I can understand their perspective. That one, you lost me. I also don't understand how the same people who are saying horrible things about Charlie Kirk, calling him a racist and a Islamophobe and a transphobe and all these things, at the same time will also be the Queers for Palestine. They can't reckon with that in their mind, and it doesn't make any sense to me.
How big do you think that group of people that think that way is as a percentage of the population?
Small, but loud.
1%?
Maybe 1%. 1-2%. Yeah, but...
And who has to shut them up? Themselves? People from their own party? People in their own belief system? Their employers? Their parents? Who?
Well, I don't believe in shutting anyone up, but I think our education system is failing.
Okay, I'll use a different term. Who should reject that idea more forcefully with them? Because I understand the difference between freedom of speech, but when it starts to be inaccurate, because freedom of speech doesn't give you the permission to make things up.
Right.
Freedom of speech doesn't give you permission to label people a certain way because you believe that that's who they are. If you don't have the justification for it, freedom of speech can equate to slander.
Yeah.
If you say something about me that isn't right. So where does it stop and how does it stop in your mind?
To me, the education system is failing. That's what it is. And that's actually what Charlie Kirk dedicated himself to on these college campuses, is offering another way.
The irony of it all.
So to me, I don't understand where the indoctrination starts. I think TikTok and social media have a lot to do with it. I'm also curious your thoughts on TikTok. We potentially have a TikTok deal.
Religion has a lot to do with it too.
Religion or the lack thereof. I don't know. I don't know how you become a queer for Palestine. I don't know where in your mind you think that that's makes any sense at all. It's just an ignorance and understanding of the way the world works. I don't know. But
people have argued with me when I have that dialogue with them that it's no different to you being passionate about the Tennessee Titans versus the Miami Dolphins. You have your favorite team and you'll get crazy in the stands and paint your face. Why is that different? And I said, okay, defending your sports team is not the same as having radical views on any side that alienate people and that are extreme. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. Well, to me, this movement, this Free Palestine, the Queers for Palestine, the completely ignoring October 7th, and then talking about the plight of people, I think that everyone should care about people who are suffering and in despair. However, I think it's very selective. The people that are all about the Free Palestine and whatever, do they care about the Uyghurs in China? Probably not. Probably don't even know who they are, nor do they care. Do they care about the human rights abuses in other places of the world, or have they just been taught that this is their issue? And they don't understand that when you have a terrorist organization as your official governing body, that's a problem. But they lost that somewhere. And the people that stand in the streets of the United States of America and say death to Israel, death to America, that have the Hamas flag, or they carry around the Iranian flag, to me, I don't know where the breakdown happened in their minds. It's startling, to say the least.
If you look at the Middle East and you study the lack of clarity around why war already always existed there, either in Lebanon or in Israel or wherever that may be, most people will tell you that it was over religion. And I'm not quite sure if it was religion. I'm not sure if it wasn't just because they were indoctrinated to believe bad person, good person, and that's it, without really getting a chance to know anybody. And I think that's social media, to me, has created a lack of connection. And if you and I had a disagreement about something, us talking about each other on social media would be very different than us talking to each other. And that, I think social media has put this natural buffer in front of people, between people, where they don't have to be accountable for what they say. They don't have to engage in a healthy debate about it. And I worry about what it's done for kids. And it's probably TikTok more than anything.
We have a framework of a TikTok deal, which I think is great if it's true. I still worry about it. I talked to Peter Schweitzer about this last week, and he said, China bankrolls what it bans in its own country. In China, TikTok is an educational tool. They're not pushing LGBTQ, gender fluidity, and free Palestine in China. You think China is concerned about human rights abuses? No, but they pump it here and they bankroll it here, and it's a social warfare that they're waging on the minds of young people. And people that say, well, TikTok is a business tool, and I'd be curious your perspective on it. There's so many small businesses that say, don't ban TikTok because it promotes my small business, and I'm sympathetic to that. But I worry about TikTok, and maybe this will be great. Maybe the algorithm, as President Trump said, will be dictated here, and maybe that'll be helpful. But the whole Chinese influence is very concerning.
You can't regulate an algorithm and then say free speech.
Yeah.
Those are sort of the opposite. I have a slightly different perspective on China's primary goal. Forget about the secondary goals of contaminating people with information. The primary goal is the collection of data and the ability to monetize that data and the ability to influence. And so if you look at the rise of Temu and Shein, those are really born out of them learning what happened on TikTok and the type of commerce. Because you started with Etsy, with people making things, and then you started with people on TikTok opening up their own store. I don't frequent TikTok a lot, but I don't see the kind of hate that I see on other platforms on TikTok. Maybe I don't go in the right places, or maybe I don't see the right things, or maybe I'm not fed the right things. I see a lot more of it on X than I do on TikTok. And X doesn't have the kind of commerce that TikTok has. What I don't like about it is how it consumes young people's minds. And so we're not picking up books, and we're not having conversations, and we're spending a lot of time trying to make sure that we look cool, or we're an influencer, and how many likes. And my wife's granddaughter, I watched this happen, where these young kids will post these videos, and if they don't get enough likes, they'll delete them and redo them. And they're really out just trying to get attention, because they're either not rooted in their faith, they're not rooted in their books, they're not rooted in their neighborhood. When we were kids, we would ride our bikes around the neighborhood and drink out of a hose. Today, the kids want Pellegrino and they want their TikTok. To be honest with you, want parents to be more accountable. I know plenty of parents who just say no screen time.
Yeah.
And that's it. I think this framework it's good that the data around the users is not going to leave. I don't think how TikTok is used is going to change. And I think people are slightly confused that if the US companies own the asset and there's a change in algorithm, because algorithms aren't code-based, they're behavior learning based. And so if the system learns it, the only way TikTok would be able to do that is if you purged the learning. It would be like taking artificial intelligence and taking everything that it has learned to now and saying, forget what you used to know, start from today. Is that what the plan is? You're just going to wipe out the memory?
No, I don't think so.
So then what changes?
I think I'm with you, though, that parents need to be primarily, if you don't want your kid on TikTok, you have to be that. They'll probably find a way to get on it anyway. But that kind of brings me to my next question about Gen Z. I'm a millennial, so I like to shit on Gen Z. I think that a lot of Gen Zers are awkward, excluding the people in this room, of course, because they can interact with other people.
Yeah. What's the age group again for a Gen Z?
Gen Z, I think, is starting, I think they're like 20, 23, 24 right now.
Today?
Gen Zers? Yeah.
And so 23 for like, how long? 15 years is like 23 to 35?
Well, I'm 33. I'm a millennial. So I think the oldest
so is
Gen
it like
Zers are
the
23
day before
right
your
now.
birthday?
No, I'm in the middle of, there's still millennials after me.
Okay.
23 is the oldest you can be and be a Gen Z, I think.
Okay, it's the
Yes,
oldest.
I think that's the oldest you can be and be Gen Z.
Okay.
But I think Gen Z, I to a degree grew up with social media, but not to this extent, and cell phones and all this. But I think Gen Z, they don't know how to communicate with humans, and I think they're terrified to speak to people, and they're terrified to answer a phone, and they can do everything over text and maybe email. But for a lot of Gen Zers, they are terrified of interaction. They are paralyzed by it almost. And that to me is concerning. Maybe they'll get out of it. Maybe they'll learn social skills. But to me, that's the difference between millennial and Gen Z is very afraid of interaction.
Here's my challenge with that. People who use social media frequently and understand technology frequently tend to be technically cerebrally quicker and smarter. What they lack sometimes are the soft skills. And so you could be really like, you could be like a savant. And we need certain people to be savants where they're building rockets and launching things and writing code that you and I would be like, I don't know how to do that. But there's a subset of the population that has immersed themselves so much into social media that their ability to hold a conversation, to do a job interview, to take care of a customer, to greet people properly, to be warm, to be sympathetic, to have empathy, that for me is more troubling. I think empathy has left the room.
Along with that, sometimes work ethic. Now, there are geniuses in Gen Z, to your point, but I see, and I'm
But
wondering,
I know some lazy millennials, too.
Oh, sure, of course.
Actually, I know more lazy millennials than I knew lazy Gen Zers.
They're in every group, right?
I send a lot of them home.
Okay.
Who think they're supposed to work till 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
And why they're not the president making $400,000.
Well, and I think that's worse with Gen Z, though, to your point. And I'll tell you why I think that is. I think that millennials, a lot of us in that age, we went through 2008 to 2010. That's when I started.
When the
I
world was
graduated
falling
in
apart.
2010 from high school, and I went to school in Vegas where there were cranes in the middle of construction that were literally just stopped in the middle. So I think we went through some hardship and economically, and we had an understanding of that.
And you saw your parents at the precipice of disaster.
And Gen Z, they went through COVID, I guess, to that point. But I think Gen Z also grew up with this. There was a big effort, probably around 2015, I think is when it started, of prioritizing mental health, which I think is important. However, I think that the concept of protecting your mental health and protecting your peace, I think it's become an excuse for a lot of people, not just Gen Z, but a lot of people. And I talk about this on the show all the time. But the number of people who think that having a bad day or being slightly overwhelmed equates to having anxiety or depression, you might just be having a bad day, or you might just need to maybe toughen up a little bit.
So I suffer from debilitating depression and terrible social anxiety. Nobody knows that. And the reason they don't is because it's not my badge of honor. It's something that I have, but I still have to get up. I'm still responsible for people. I still have to pay my bills. I still have to make sure other people can pay their bills. I have shareholders that I'm accountable to. I have people in my community that I'm accountable to. And rather than being an excuse, It's something that I have to acknowledge, and that's my baggage to wear. I think what young people have tended to do, not all, but many, have said, my badges I'm going to wear here, and you need to modify your behavior, your work schedule, your expectations of me because of my mental health. My mental health is always in trouble, mine personally. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
But they've been given this excuse almost, and
Because
it's an easy one to use.
Because people are allowing them to do it.
But it's the victim culture that you talk about that I think has become a problem, not just for Gen Z, but I think Gen Z is just the whole let's remove the stigma. That's great. But now I see certain people in Gen Z, it's like they can really use that. Well, my work-life balance, my mental health, and it's an excuse not to work. And to me, that's...
I want you to have mental health. Here's a great way to do it. Get up a little earlier, go work out. Doesn't matter what you do, go for a walk, eat properly, get good rest, have some faith in your life, be nice to other people, work hard, and you'll have a lot of mental health.
Yeah. That's great. I don't think that's...
Do you need time off to have mental health?
I think a lot of them...
Well, you have Saturdays or Sundays, or you have other time. You have your nighttime. But if you want to pay your bills and you want to build a family or you want to buy a house, which should be the American dream, nobody's going to give it to you. And when you tell me that I'm supposed to give it to you, I'm going to double down and not give it to you. But if you show up, and this is kind of how I am as an employer, if you show up every day, show up on time every day, you're great to your coworkers, you treat the customers great, you respect our assets, and you're struggling, just for whatever reason. I find out something, you're struggling, you can't pay your car payment, but you're not asking anybody for anything. You're not putting your hand out. Somebody finds out that you lost your apartment because of whatever. I'll be the first person.
Right.
And so will you, quietly, to say, I got you. I got you. And people will say, I don't want a handout. It's like, it's not a handout. You're showing up every day. And I think if young people would understand that it's the effort and the discipline that will earn you maybe a hand up and not a handout, as opposed to you showing up saying, I'm coming late every day. I just want you to know that.
Right.
And you can't fire me because I am suffering from mental health. So I'm a protected class. And we had these HR organizations and these companies around the country and legislators support this idea that all of a sudden the employee became more entitled than the employer. I want people to be happy and have health insurance and be safe, but I don't want you to get it because you tell me I have to give it to you.
Brings me to my next question about the rise of socialism and Zohran Mamdani. New Yorker, folks that don't live in New York that are conservative, great for us because it's like, well, if this is the way the party wants to go, we'll win a lot of elections elsewhere that are not these blue dots. But for people who live in New York, even if they are far left, I think there's a lot of concern that the financial capital of the world could be run by somebody who is a self-proclaimed socialist. But Charlie Kirk actually talked about this, and it's something that he started TPUSA to address. Early on, it was big government sucks and socialism sucks. But he talked about something that I think is important. When young people don't feel like they can be a part of the American dream, they start to resent it. So if you don't feel like you can own a home and you feel like you can't even afford your rent and you're drowning, then socialism looks good to you because you have this victim mentality of, I don't have ownership in any of this, so I'm not a capitalist because I'm not able to break into it. And I'm concerned that that's exactly what New York is experiencing right now, and young people for Mamdani or whoever else they're supporting that's got a socialist bent. Not that they truly want socialism, but they're so frustrated with what they think capitalism is that they want to try something different. And I think the Republican Party would be foolish to ignore the feelings that they're having. And I'm wondering how you think, not even a political party, but how do we address what is truly an unaffordability crisis in some places?
Well, let me start with, I'm a property owner in New York, and I'm petrified. And I don't see a path to him losing today. And I've told many people that if you're curious what it's going to look like in New York, Chicago and LA are a preview to the movie. And the response back to me is, well, LA's property prices are fine. And I said, they are fine because there's sunshine and, you know, great weather and lots of cool things out there. In Chicago, it's not fine. Businesses have left, the tax base has crumbled, the education system has crumbled, crime is rampant, murder is rampant. And so it's a preview to the movie. to have that preview to the movie become a feature film in what's supposed to be the economic capital of the world is very, very troubling. I'm not convinced, and we talked about this on Big Money, I'm not convinced that he's not hyper exaggerating. In my mind, I can't process that an entitled individual like himself, who has very wealthy parents, where he didn't really have to do much to have what he has today, who just wants to give everything away, I'm not convinced that he actually fully, full stop, believes everything that he says. I'm wondering if he's trying to be as radical as he possibly can be. That's me trying to make myself feel better, that no one person who's been given most of what he has would actually believe the things that he says. But if in the instance that it's true, I worry that Republicans like yourself who don't live there, and even President Trump, who loves New York, that's his, that's his place, may not be saying, I need to show people, I need this Petri dish to show people, be careful what you wish for. Is that why nobody's falling out on the other side? You still have Eric Adams in. Why? You still have all these other candidates running. Why? Why nobody's leaning in? I thought after Labor Day, people were going to lean in. It's almost like people have just said, social experiment, not in my town. If the people inside of that town want to stop it from happening, they have one choice.
But it's such a bad choice.
No, they have one choice: to show up and ensure he doesn't win.
I know, but I think
They're
that
not
it's
going
also
to.
a problem in New York because they don't have a great alternative. I like Curtis Lewa. Unfortunately, he probably doesn't have a chance running as a Republican in New York, even though I think he's got a lot of great ideas.
Yeah.
He could win in Tennessee.
Yeah.
I'm not dumb. I don't think winning in New York City is possible for him. But when your other two options are Cuomo and Eric Adams, it's not like there's a beacon.
But is it the lesser? Do I pick the lesser of the evils?
It's the lesser of two evils, but I don't think that there's enough excitement about the other two to overcome the excitement around Mamdani. So that's a concern. And that's why he's going to win.
He's going to win. You have to hope that the line of defense is the city council.
The city council is worse than him in many regards.
Not all of them. Not all of them want free grocery stores and everybody's got a bus pass for life.
Yeah.
I don't think everybody wants that because the tax base will crumble very fast. Tourism will fall. The hotel tax will fall. The restaurant tax will fall. Like, I don't know how that city actually doesn't become Gotham. I don't know what
And then
happens.
who's left to pick up the pieces? It's actually the low-income folks who will be the ones left holding the bag because the rich people are going to go to West Palm.
I wouldn't be surprised if even those folks, the lower income folks, find themselves out of there because the costs are still high and they can go to other towns around the country. I don't know where, but I worry about it a lot. I hate making a base case to prove a point.
Yeah.
But I don't know what else is going to happen at this point.
That's the one thing is you guys have been wanting the socialism thing for so long, maybe if you see what it looks like, maybe you'll understand.
Well, we've seen it in Chicago. We've seen it in LA. Why do we need to see it again?
I don't want to see it again, but unfortunately, how do we address the affordability issues though?
So part of the reason that I got involved in Bed Bath is that it wasn't because I wanted to sell a bunch of towels. And a lot of people are very confused about that. The reason that I love the RV business as much as I do is because it's alternative housing. The reason I wanted to get into the Bed Bath business is because it's my way to break into the housing market and use customer transactions as a way to understand what people are doing and then to try to find alternatives around building, alternatives around financing. I think that it's going to require people not to live in city centers. And in the old days, you would see this sprawl out to the suburbs. So I don't know how long you've been in Tennessee, but Franklin, Tennessee and Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which are not far from where we're sitting today, 10 years ago, there wasn't much out there. And I think companies, private corporations have to make a commitment to go invest in towns outside of out of the city center. Ultimately, when you go out and you look at land, you have to figure out where am I going to find land and how am I going to build public transportation so that you could actually make it affordable to buy. I was in Georgia Sunday and I was driving in the middle of nowhere and I saw houses for $300,000. First house I ever bought was $267,558. I had a 17% mortgage because I only had 5% down, and it was the greatest day of my life. I could barely afford to do it. But the idea of taking that American dream opportunity away from people is a problem, which means that jobs have to be pushed out to the burbs. How do we do that? You have to incentivize companies to do that. So when somebody like Gavin Newsom says to somebody like me, and I'm a small example, I'm a gnat in the world, take your business elsewhere. What you're telling small towns and what you're telling households is the number of jobs that are going to be available to me are going to be finite. And if I can't find a job, then I have to leave. And where am I going to go? So job creation really is at the center of it all. And so while everybody hates tariffs, and I don't love them, but I understand the benefit of them. The benefit of them is not today, not tomorrow, and maybe not even next week. Will manufacturing or will job creation come back to this country in a way that's possible? Yes. And where does it happen? It happens by companies buying large tracts of land, by moving Amazon distribution centers and Chevy manufacturing plants out and away from all of this. Can't be in proper Nashville. It's not possible. Can't be in Manhattan. Not possible. Can't be in Miami. Not possible. But you can go to Okeechobee. You can go out to West Kendall. You can go out to all these remote places. And so what I want non-business people to understand is tariffs feel bad today because the costs are transitory. They should solve a problem for tomorrow that should lead to business investments in the U.S., that should lead to small towns building homes and factories and offices and things like that there, which should lead to new development, new housing starts, and new housing starts at a lower price.
Is there anything that
that was a lot.
It
Sorry.
was, but it's important. Is there anything President Trump has done so far economically that you think was a bad idea?
Yeah, the herky-jerkiness around tariffs, on again, off again. It's hard. It's
You
hard.
think was that part of the negotiation, though?
It may have been, and he's one of the best negotiators that's ever lived. But as a business owner, it's hard to plan.
Yeah.
You don't know what to do. And while you want to source more domestically, ultimately, today you cannot. And so you need to have this transition plan. And I think tomorrow it's going to be 50%. It's like, I don't know what to do next. And so you're responsible for humans and you're trying to make margin and you're responsible to shareholders. And I think he understands that, which is why he kept giving extensions. I think his cronies that are big CEOs of big companies said like, hey, we get what the idea is, but we have to phase it in a little bit more. I would say that may be my only, that and maybe one other thing. I believe that the Fed has to be independent. I don't believe that there should be Fed governors who lie on their mortgage application. Yeah. That's a separate issue. But I do believe it has to be independent. And I want him to be the capitalist that I know he is. And I want him to be slightly more objective about the necessity for it to be independent and to try to reason with people, to have them understand, to hold people accountable, to give them the data. If we're operating on bad jobs data, which we've been if we're operating on bad, any sort of financial data, and those individuals are making decisions, that's a problem. That same criticism I have of what I perceive to be a slight lack of independence, I could argue exists more fulsomely on the other side when there's a bad jobs data number and there's an emergency Fed cut rate of 0.5 point. And we got worse data this year than we did a year ago before the election. And the same thing didn't happen.
What would it be like today if Kamala Harris was our president for a business owner?
I think profits would be significantly down. Investment in businesses would be significantly down. Unemployment would be significantly higher because the overreach and overregulation of how the Democrats believe businesses should be run would cause people like myself, and I'm the smallest of the smallest, cause people like myself to not invest in expansion, to not make acquisitions, to not borrow money from banks for growth, to not issue dividends, to not hire new employees, it would be very different. I think we'd be living, if you thought 2008 and 9 were bad, I think we would be already in 2008 or 9, because I don't think we'd be managing how to balance inflation. Inflation isn't because there's too much demand. Inflation is because we're dealing with some transitory tariffs. Finding the balance of understanding how to offset that and mitigate it with a rate. I think you'd have a national minimum wage too.
Yeah, among many other things.
It would scare the life out of me. And I love to debate this with people. People have said, you're not for employee rights. I was like, who said that to you?
Yeah.
I have 14,000 people. I'm absolutely for employee rights, but I'm also for the company's rights. And the employee-employer is a transaction. We're not family. We work together. I provide a wage, you provide service. This is a meritocracy. You outperform your peer, you're going to make more. You're going to get promoted more. You're going to have more opportunity. It's a simple model for me. This idea that you should get something because he got something, even though you do a worse job, you do the same job because of your color, because of your gender.
So what do you think about the DEI stuff? And how did that impact you when it was full force? Because
I don't have it in my business. And I used to have people say to me, your stock is going to be rated more poorly because you don't have DEI as a standard board practice, or you don't have it as a mandatory. For me, I was like, give me the best person.
Yeah.
I just want the best person for who I don't care what they look like. I don't care about anything. I want to win. And if I'm coaching a football team and the quarterback happens to be 2 feet tall, but he could throw a ball like somebody I've never seen before, that's it. He wins. He gets the job. If a person outsells or outperforms or outthinks or outstrategizes, they win. I don't want to give anybody a chance just because I'm supposed to. Because honestly, nobody gave me a chance.
Right.
Because they were supposed to.
Well, some of these entities.
That's probably where it comes from for me.
Yeah. Well, for most people.
When I went to college and I went to fill out my application, I looked for Middle Eastern. It wasn't on there. And I got rejected from like 19 out of 20 colleges. And I was like, yeah, but what about me? And my mom's like, what about you? You're the same as everybody else. You're lucky that we could afford to send you to college. Apply, get better grades, you'll get in. Don't get better grades, you'll go to community college. That's how it works.
So my last question for you, because I know you're a busy man, you got a lot to do. Speaking of that, do you think that it's worth it for young people to go to a 4-year university? Or do you think it's for everybody? Or do you think there needs to be more of a conversation around trade, vocational, other perhaps entrepreneurial pursuits outside of a 4-year degree?
I think it's important for people to get an education that doesn't have a geography necessarily tied to it, and it doesn't have a construct tied to it. I do want people to get a form of training, and whether you go to college, you go to vocational school, or you need to support your mom and dad and get a job right out of college, I still want you to get the training. I want skilled labor where that person can have an opportunity to advance. I don't believe that you should have to have a 4-year degree to get a particular job. If you possess the skills, you still need to possess the skills. So I'm back to this meritocracy idea where if you're qualified or you're a savant and you have stayed up all night long and you've taken, extra courses and you are the smartest person in the world, your qualification isn't whether you have a degree or not. Do I think it's important to go to school? It was for me because I was a knucklehead, because I needed structure and I needed discipline. But that was me. My parents could afford to send me to school, but that was me. I also know a lot of people who work in my organization who are very successful, who are smarter than I'll ever be, who could not go to college for whatever reason. It's a choice. And it's no different than saying, do I like barbecue from Texas or barbecue from Nashville? It's a preference. Mm-hmm. But I do want people to have some sort of formal training. If I could ask anything of President Trump, one thing, if he was the genie and he said, I'll give you one wish, and most people would expect me to drive something towards small business. It wouldn't be that. It would be for government-funded vocational schools. That would be my one wish. government-funded vocational schools. And while that's probably a terrible idea because the government shouldn't be educating, I just said funded. I want people who may not have the type of education that I was allowed. If they want to be a plumber, if they want to work on the railroad, if they want to work in the steel mill, if they want to build cars, if they want to be an electrician, if they want to be a coder, if they have a passion about something because they saw their grandpa do it, or they think that they see a white space, or they love working with their hands. I think that we should provide that opportunity for people because that's how this country was built. The Industrial Revolution was a function of training people on how to do that type of work. I don't know where you get that today. Do I think it's great that we have a philosophy class? Sure. Do I think it's great that I was mandated to take philosophy and ceramics or whatever I had to do? Not really. Do I think it's really, really valuable that vocational schools can teach people how to be a mechanic or a plumber or electrician? That's my only request for President Trump. And I've never told anybody this, but I don't have any kids. And my wife's older than me. So more than likely, I'm going to die alone. And I don't say that to like have it be some sad story, but it is my plan to leave my entire fortune towards the idea around vocational schools. My dad used to work in a steel mill, and I came from an auto family, and I'm in the RV business. And when I go to Elkhart and I see these men and women working all day long with their hands and cuts and hard work on their feet, and I think about how we don't pay enough attention to people building houses and building roads and building factories and doing all this stuff. I honestly want my legacy to be that I help people educate themselves the way they want it to be educated.
And also, perhaps the government should not be in the student loan business.
Well, the government, I'd like to finish on that if we could. I have an interesting relationship with Jamie Dimon. And he helped me get loans when I was just starting out for my business. And Jamie and I share one major thing in common, which are loans are easy to give. Teaching people how to pay it back and holding them accountable to pay it back is different. I don't think the government should be in the business of lending people money. There are banks to lend people money. If the government wants to backstop it or do something like that, fine. But the idea of a government lending money usually leads to a government forgiving the money. And then it turns into a grant. And I don't think it's fair, and I know I'm going to get in trouble for this, that if you and I were going to open a business next to each other and we were going to compete, if you got your money for free and I had to pay for mine, the playing field's already unleveled. And I don't think that's fair. Nobody ever gave me anything for free other than an opportunity. What I did with it, that's up to me.
That's a great place to end it.
Thank you.
In agreement. Thank you so much for taking all the time.
You got it.
And
this wasn't too controversial.
And you're opening a ton of stores in Tennessee. Because Tennessee is a great place to do business, isn't it?
I'm opening up a ton of stores, and the one thing that I'm most excited about is bringing a different perspective of business to Fox. That's the thing that I love most about leaving where I was and coming to Fox, because it's so intelligent from a policy standpoint and so intelligent from a business standpoint. And small business owners, I think, really feel the way we do, and they need a platform and they need a place to learn and to get better. So that's
well,
what
we
I'm
love
grateful
having
for.
you on the channel too.
I'm loving it.
A better home, and you're
much
on
better
Fox
home.
Business, and you're going to be hosting on Fox Business. So
Yeah,
we enjoy it.
We're enjoying
we
it.
enjoy having you part of the family.
Thank you.
I love it.
We'll see
All
you
right,
soon.
thank you so much, Marcus.
Take care.
All right, folks, that does it for this episode of Tomi Lahren is Fearless. Catch full episodes on Outkick, Fox Nation, also the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. For more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click right here. And don't forget to subscribe. Just click right here so you never miss a beat. I will be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.